Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello, and a very warm welcome to the latest episode. It is Tuesday, the 17th of March 2026. Happy St. Patrick's Day if you've been celebrating. Has it been a nice day where you are? Because it's been absolutely gorgeous where I am. Really felt like summer. It was really, really hot, and I went out completely overdressed. So I had layers and layers jettisoned all over the place. And it's been absolutely beautiful, like the most perfect spring day. So, let me give you some news from the plot because there's quite a lot to tell you this evening. So, first of all, shout out to Laura for sending me a fantastic message. Laura's been binge listening a lot of the episodes, possibly all of them. I dread to think how I come across if you actually listen to all my episodes back to back, but well done, Laura, for doing that. And welcome to the latest episode. Now, we started off this morning. Lion managed to get me twice this morning. This is my naughty youngster cockerel, and he's just forgotten his manners again. And he actually managed to get me twice this morning, the second time when I was securing the door. And I think he thinks he's being really clever because I've got my back to him. He always gets me when I've turned my back on him. And he managed to get me twice this morning. He is so unbelievably fast. And then he kind of runs off and does this little dance, and I have to go and grab him and pick him up and carry him around for 10 minutes to remind him that I am the boss and he is not to behave like that. But he and his brother, Kung Fu Mo Lee, are so highly strung. They are quite extraordinary. Now, I'm really fascinated, and I'm digressing here slightly, bear with me, about this whole nurture versus nature debate and how much your environment influences you and how much of it is just like in your genes. And it's really interesting when you have chickens and you watch them, because if they're all in the same environment like mine are, then I think the nature, what's it going to be? The nurture one is kind of irrelevant because it's a constant. So they're all brought up the same way, they all live the same way, nothing changes. So any difference in their personalities, I think, really comes down to their genes. And the white ones, which is Lion and Kung Fu Mo Lee, and their little sister, Little Mo, are absolutely bonkers. Like they're literally in a whole planet all of their own. They're incredibly highly strung. They're the equivalent, I suppose, of like a thoroughbred horse, if you know what they're like race horses. And their dad, Roland, is a big, fat, old bird. Well, he's only two, but he seems quite old. And he's absolutely rock steady. Like he's the calmest, relaxed cockerel in the world. He likes to have his feet on the ground. He's just very steady, doesn't have aggressive bone in his body. But the white leghorns are just absolutely nuts. They want to be up high all the time. They're always trying to escape. They're always flying around. And you pick them up and they're just a quivering bundle of feathers. And their eyes, like they literally look like they're high on drugs. They really do. So that's very interesting watching the different, how the different breeds turn up, because the babies, Kylie and Dangerbird, not Kylie, sorry, Kermie and Dangerbird, who were born in August, same dad, Roland, the calmest, steadiest, most relaxed birds you could ever meet. They're lovely. But the three white leghorns are just absolutely nuts. So there's a little bit more work to do with Lion to get him to remember his manners. Now, I've been doing quite a bit of weeding and bed prepping over the weekend, which is basically bed prepping is just weeding at the moment. And there's not, well, I was going to say there isn't loads to do. There is loads to do. Some of it I have already done and I'm working my way through it. And it's very rewarding at this time of the year because the weeds just literally just pop straight out of the soil. And it's absolutely lovely. And I finally managed to move my geraniums and the sedums that were right in the center of the entrance path to the plot. So that is good. And the geranium's actually been split into about half a dozen different plants. So that was very productive. And the sedums have been replanted down in bed 4, which is the foliage bed, and they can just hang out down there, which just leaves the enormous buddleia, which does have to be lifted and moved. And I'm going to need my other half to come and help me with that because it's just too much of a beast for me to get it out. The soil is absolutely lovely in the areas where the ground has been under cultivation for the last couple of years. It's only 2024 and 2025. are the only years that I've actually been doing stuff on it. Before, the field just had the chickens on it. And it's absolutely incredible the difference that 2 years worth of growing veg or growing flowers on the soil has made to it. I'm so impressed with it. It's literally like, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I do. I am a little bit bragging because it's just like the dream soil. I'm very, very lucky. And I honestly didn't think it would come good this quickly, to be honest, because it was a field that had been grazed for years. It just had grass there. And, it's quite compacted. It's not been aerated or anything whatsoever, but it's lovely. The peonies have shot up, especially the new ones. They have really put on an enormous growth spurt. So that is lovely. And finally, the echinacea have resurfaced. And these are the ones that they're herbaceous perennials and they disappear over the winter. And there's just absolutely no evidence they're there whatsoever. Like some herbaceous perennials, you'll see a little bit of something and you'll know that there's something still going on. Not with the echinacea, they're totally hiding. Anyway, they finally made an appearance, which is great. And lots of the new foliage plants have greened up as well. So Physocarpus and Rebes, they're two new varieties that I bought in the sale last year, and they just look absolutely gorgeous. So I can't wait for them to turn into like full-sized big plants because I just bought, I think they're 2 litre pots, so they're not very big at all. So it's going to take a while for them to get going, but they look very promising at the moment. And the next thing on the list up there is to put the supports up for the climbing roses. So the climbing roses got healed into massive pots because I didn't actually want to dig the soil and in order to heal them in normally. And I know some people heal their stuff into compost heaps or wherever they want, but my compost heaps have got too much fresh material, so I didn't want to use those. So I ended up just dumping them in massive, massive tubs, and they are doing really well. But I've got a little bit of work to do to get the ground ready to put them up because there are some weeds at the bases. They're going to be going up old hen houses or an old duck house, the ones my ducks that got stolen used to live in. And I fished a bit of rebar out of a skip February last year, and that is going to be used. It's going to be attached to the side of the old duck house with some wooden battens so that the rebar is like an inch off the actual structure. And I did say to my other half, when we do this, like, don't do like a really, really super professional builder's style job because the integrity of the duck house is not what it was when we got it. When we got it secondhand anyway. And I'm worried that if he does the installation too well, like the entire duck house will just collapse. So I've said, just do a bit of a semi-professional job. Don't go overboard with it because I just worried about whether the actual hen house duck house will fall down. And then I've got some other rose climbers which are going to go up Roosty's house. Roosty also got stolen when they came for the ducks. So nobody lives in his house anymore. We've just kept it as like it'll always just be Roosty's house. So we're going to put the royal we here. We're going to put a couple of climbing roses up Roosty's house, and that will look pretty as well. And the reason that I wanted to go for some climbers, not just because some of them are absolutely stunning, but because they take up less space. So space is at a premium for me on the field. And I just thought it would be a good idea to have some roses that are just climbing roses, that they're just going to go up and they'll look very pretty and they'll cover the houses and they won't take up much of a footprint on the ground. I've also got to lay a whole load of bark mulch on the path, the main path in, and then start laying it on the paths in between the beds and then also on the beds. So I think I'm going to be covering the entire plot in bark. Now, I'm a huge fan of bark. I use it absolutely everywhere. I have it in my own garden. I try and get gardening clients to use it. I absolutely love it. It's so good to keep the weeds out, to keep the moisture in, to protect the surface from splashback and, just being rained on basically. And it obviously feeds the soil as well. And it's a slow process. It takes a while. And there's all this hoo-ha over, oh, does it lock up nitrogen temporarily? Well, yes, it does. So the trick is to put it around shrubs and trees and foliage and that kind of thing, rather than say around new annuals. Like I wouldn't bark mulch around new transplants or annuals or seedlings or babies or anything like that, just because you obviously don't want any kind of issue with them. But anything that's good to go, like I would probably put it around the perennials, to be honest, those of them that need it, because in my experience, it is just superb. And the perennials are just, they're off now anyway. So that is all fine. And I'm also going to put some horse manure down for the roses in April, which I am going to get from a local supplier, but not like a private one, but like a proper shop where it's been treated. Because sometimes if you get horse manure, there's two things wrong with it. One, it could be full of weed seeds, and you're not going to know until they all germinate. You could bring something unpleasant or that just gives you a hard time in. And the second thing, if people are using wormers on their horses, then the residue from the wormer comes out in the manure. And I don't want anything like that on the land because it's organic. And that's how I want it to be. So I'm going to go and get something from a shop that has hopefully been sort of effectively pasteurized, I suppose. And hopefully there won't be any residues or weed seeds left alive. Now, news from the greenhouse. Oh, it's all kicking off in the greenhouse. It's gone from very, very calm to absolute bedlam in there. It's only a tiny greenhouse. I haven't got a polytunnel or anything like that. So yesterday I was sowing more seed. So second batch of some hardy annuals that I'd started off last week, and the first batch of some others, including larkspur, which I found in my fridge. And this is the first year that I have ever grown larkspur. I've always been too frightened to do larkspur. The whole delphinium larkspur thing just gives me the shivers. Anyway, I thought, no, be brave, do it this year. And I got the packet out and looked at it, and it said cold stratify. So I was like, oh my goodness, right, throw it in the fridge. So it's been in the fridge for over a week, and hopefully that has given it the cool temperature. Oh, sorry, I'm just picking the dog up because as soon as I start doing the podcast, she's like, me, look at me, look at me. Right, stay there for a minute, please. So anyway, I fished the larkspur out of the fridge yesterday and sowed that. And this week I have been using trays rather than soil blocking. Now, if you listen regularly, you'll know I bought myself a soil blocker, only a very little one, and I thought I'd give it a go because you can get so many seeds started so quickly and it doesn't take up much space. And all of that is true. I cannot fault that whatsoever. But I did have some difficulty using it because it's new, and clearly I should have practiced and not just assumed that it would be really straightforward, because it looks very straightforward. And I thought, yeah, no, I'll be able to do that easily. And in the end, it has just not been anywhere near as fast as it needs to be. And the other thing is that when these little soil blocks come out and they look like a large bar of dairy milk, like the little squares, they are so, so tiny that I've spent more time over the last week fretting over whether they are happy, whether they've dried out, what they're going to do, than just the old fashioned way, which is sowing in my chicken thigh trays, which is tried and tested. So the other thing I was doing was mixing in this sort of coir compost vermiculite thing when I was doing soil blocking so that you get the texture right. And again, it's just something else to have to think about, something else that slowed me down, that increased the time it took me to do it. So I thought, no, I'm just going to go back to the chicken thigh trays. And I managed to do, I think I did 405 seeds yesterday in an hour, which I was really pleased about because I did half that amount in more than twice the time when I was doing with the soil blocker. So again, it's not my soil blocker. It's nothing wrong with it. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it is a great piece of kit. It's just that I'm not quite fast enough yet with it, and I feel a bit under pressure in order to get these seeds in and germinated, that I thought now is probably not the time to be experimenting with a new piece of kit right at the start of the season. I will pick it up later in the season and do some more stuff, perhaps just for myself or just for fun, or just maybe fourth or fifth batches of something, just to see if I can get the speed up on that and get the mixture right and then get the watering right on it as well, rather than um, putting at risk the important seeds that I need to get on the go now. And I think I'm also going to need a teaspoon to get these little tiny little individual blocks out when they need transplanting on somewhere else. But what was the other thing? Oh, yes, and the trays are just so fast. I can just literally sow a tray of seed in my chicken thigh trays and label and vermiculite, and it's on the shelf unbelievably quickly. So I think that's the way I want to go with that. Now, as you know, I'm the queen of spreadsheets. I have been making lots of detailed notes about all stages of this seed sowing and germination process, including timing, how long it takes me to do all the seeds, and then working out actual timings per seed. Probably a level of detail I don't need, but I just was, if I've got the calculator out, I might as well do it. But it has been very useful to work out the actual labor cost per seed. Very interesting just to know that. And I've also been making notes of when the seeds actually germinate so that my spreadsheet is going to be even more accurate in 2027. Because I think when I talked through the making of this spreadsheet for everything that I'm growing this year, I've got all these individual tabs for each of the annuals. So every single annual has its own tab. And within that tab is a list of when I sowed that batch, how long the germination is, how long it's going to spend in the greenhouse, how long it needs to be hardened off for, when it can go outside, when the earliest date it's going to flower from, and the latest date. And as you know, if you look on the back of seed packets, they're often quite general about how long the germination rate is. Some of them are like between 14 and 21 days or between 7 and 14 days. And of course, they have to be general because they don't know the specific conditions that you are trying to germinate these seeds under. And they also don't say, but if you do it on a heat mat, it'll be a lot faster. Or if you do it outside, it might be a lot slower because the soil will be colder. So they obviously make it very, very general. So I have based all my calculations on like the shortest germination date. So, for example, 7 days, and the longest one, for example, 14 days, and done all my calculations on that. And then the agrostemma that I sowed last week, they of course germinated in 4 days, which has completely blown my spreadsheet out of the water. I don't even update it because then all of the other cells will update, and I'll probably have like a flowering time of like a week on Thursday or something ridiculous, and I won't be ready. But the premise is the more data I collect, the more accurate I'm going to be next year. And this is also the first year that I have done things on a heat mat. And it's been quite interesting to see just how rapidly things have come up, which of course makes sense because, the warmer the soil is, it's the perfect germinating conditions for them. But because I've never ever used one before and I've sown like my whole life in the start of March, I'm very much used to waiting for a couple of weeks for even the smallest hint of anything happening. So to have stuff up in 4 days, it's like I don't even feel ready, but you're here, so it's fine. Anyway, I'm hoping that, as I say, this data will help me next year because it could mean that I don't even need to start this germination process so soon if the heat mat means that all the germination periods are much reduced. And yes, so the other thing is that data is going to be useful is for working out costings per square meter by the end of this year, which is something that I want to do. And I think I've talked about this before. It's something that I also learned on my course that I did with Jenny Marks about understanding like costs per square meter, or you can do it per bed. Now, a lot of my beds are all different sizes, so I wanted to work mine out per square meter. And I'm hoping that collecting all of this data is going to mean that I will have so much information at the end of the year about what I've done that I will be able to say for that particular plant, the cost of production is this per square meter, the sale price is this, profit and loss, etc. And I'll be able to work out for sure whether it's a plant that I want to actually grow again in the future and be able to do some evaluations based on that. Now, in other news, tulips, total disaster. I'm just about to put the whole lot in the bin. Now, regular listener, you will know that I've been hiding my tulips in a variety of different places. I decided, in my wisdom, which is not good, to grow them all in crates this year because I just could not be bothered to dig a massive trench. Huge mistake. I will be doing trench planting from now on. I'm never doing the crates again. So I had a huge crate which I had to hide in half an oil drum in Kylie's room with some mesh over. The rats still got in there and ate them. They ate a crate and a half outside. And then I had one crate that was completely untouched that was in an old plastic igloo hen house. And they survived all winter. They've done really well. and they got really big. So I thought, well, these guys are fine to come outside now. You know where this is going, right? So I got them out. I put them on a plastic table where the legs are kind of underneath the tabletop. So it's virtually impossible, but clearly not impossible for a rodent to actually get up the legs and onto the table. So what happened? Yes. So they were out for one night and they made it through the first night. And I turned up in the morning. I was like, oh, this is genius. I've cracked it. The next night, somebody's been through and had a rifle through a third of them. So total disaster. But what's been very interesting is that quite a lot of the bulbs were moldy. And even the rats have not wanted to eat them. So they have chewed off the stem, which is probably about 4 inches tall, and then they have just left the bulbs behind. So that's it. Actually did make me chuckle because there's not much rats won't eat, to be honest, and they have turned their nose up at these bulbs. So I'm going to cut my losses now because there is nothing worse than just keep staring at something that is half destroyed, and it just reinforces the fact that I made a terrible mistake and they have to go. I'm going to compost the compost. Well, no, I might try and reuse some of the compost, but I'm not sure about the mold. I need to check that out first. And actually just throw the rest of the bulbs away. So the heads have also started forming too soon. So I've got these tiny little flower buds just kind of poking up over the top of the compost. So the bulbs are clearly very, very weak and possibly also very stressed, which is how I feel most of the time. Anyway, according to ChatGPT, it sounds like it's a penicillium bulb rot. So you have this dusty blue mold, which is actually going between the bulb scales. Now, the bulbs are showing obviously all of this fungus damage all over them. There's no stem elongation whatsoever. So there's a couple of reasons why. It could be the bulbs stored too warm or too humid, or they were already infected. I'm going to lay the blame firmly at my door because I've been ordering bulbs from J. Parker's for years and never had a single problem whatsoever. So I suspect it's because I stored them in the box in the back of my car for, I can't remember, but probably over a month, something like that, because I just didn't have anywhere else to put them. Things get into my shed and eat stuff. The house is too warm. Anywhere up on the field, they will just get eaten. I mean, clearly, I just need to buy like metal cages and just store things in there. But then the humidity has to be right as well. So I did not get any of that right whatsoever. And clearly, my car is damper than I thought it was and not a good place to put them. So, a very, very expensive mistake. And the horrible irony of this is that I have a huge terracotta pot at home on the way out of my gate, and some of my tulip bulbs have come up in there that have been planted in this pot for years and years. And I didn't refresh them last year because I was on a budget, so I spent the money on the ones for the cut flowers instead. Silly me. Anyway, these beautiful tulips have come up and they're actually flowering now, which I think is odd and very, very early. But anyway, they are. So every time I leave home or come home and I stare at these tulips, I'm reminded of what terrible mistake I have made. So I think we'll just abandon that one there. So I've got one final thing to run past you this evening. Are cut flowers a luxury item? Discuss. Now, somebody said on Instagram this week, and I cannot remember whom, that they felt that cut flowers were a luxury item, and I disagree with this. Now, technically, apparently, they are. Apparently, economists class something as a luxury item when it's not required for survival, which I think is a bit of an interesting way of classifying things because I would say, well, what about sanitary products? Because I wouldn't consider that to be a luxury item at all. I would consider that to be a necessity for half the population of the entire world. But there we are, that's what they say. And also, I think because flowers are perishable, they don't last, so they're a kind of temporary indulgence, if you like. And I do disagree with this. I would love to change the narrative around cut flowers being a luxury item because not just because I'm trying to sell some to people, but because I just consider them to be something that is a natural product that grows in nature and therefore shouldn't be considered as a luxury item. I mean, I think the reason this is stuck in my brain is because all of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East at the moment. And this, as you know, is not a politics show, and I'm not going to indulge in anything like that. But there are some really, really horrendous things going on there, which is terrible. But in terms of how it relates to my life, the economic shocks from what's going on could be quite bad. I mean, the fuel price has already gone through the roof and it wasn't brilliant to start with. But we're potentially facing other things that are going to happen because of what's going on over there in terms of like the cost of fertilizers, which doesn't matter to me on the plot because I don't use any, but in terms of like food production and just the cost of everything going through the roof. And I would hate to think that people start cutting back on what they perceive to be luxury items or what are positioned as luxury items because of what is going on in the whole world. Now, flowers are expensive because they're labor intensive and skilled labor is required to produce them in this country. And well, in fact, wherever they're produced, there is a skill required to produce them properly. And, you know, they're often reserved for special occasions here in the UK. I mean, we use them for weddings and christenings and funerals and so forth, and we give them to people as presents. But I would love that they were considered something that you pick up when you go and buy your bread and milk, and that more people enjoyed flowers because they are just the most wonderful connection to the season, to where we are in the year, and such a mood enhancer, just even looking at a couple of stems. I mean, I've got some tiny little muscari on my desk and some primrose flowers and some narcissus, some little tets, and what a little hyacinth flower, and then in another little tiny bud vase, I've got just a beautiful bicolored daffodil, which all my daffodils in my garden, funnily enough, have come up, and all the ones on the plot are either blind or they've just given up the ghost. So I'm a little bit jinxed with stuff like that this year. But the point being, they just add something really special to the day to have cut flowers. And so I just wish we could make them more accessible to everybody, and hopefully they won't become subject to any economic shocks because of what is going on. I want them to be something that we all just get to have and enjoy. And we definitely need more growers to be growing in the UK, certainly. I can't speak for any other markets, but we definitely need more growers and more beautiful flowers produced so that everybody can enjoy them, and to make us more resilient here to whatever else goes on in the world, which is just pretty horrendous. I have taken a break from watching in the news at the moment because it is just unrelentingly horrendous, and it makes one feel very powerless and very sad at what human beings are capable of doing to each other. Anyway, on that really cheerful note, that is me for Tuesday. I'll be interested to hear what you think. You can always send me a DM on Instagram, drop me an email from my website. The link to that is in the show notes. I always love to hear from you. And you are part of a community of listeners all over the world. There are hundreds and hundreds of you now, and you are very, very special. You're all very important to me. I don't monetize the podcast in any way, and I don't need listeners in order to run adverts or do anything ghastly like that, because adverts in podcasts drive me absolutely up the wall. But the point I'm getting at is that you are a community of like-minded people, and you are always very welcome here on the podcast. And I hope you will come back and join me for Friday's episode. Have a great rest of the week. All the best.